Coming in at number 10, let's just get it out of the way, we have Annabelle. Okay, so we all know that Annabelle the doll resides in the Occult Museum, so let's just honestly get her out of the way and move on. Annabelle is a Raggedy Ann doll that lives in a glass box because she simply can't be trusted to be unsheathed to the real world. The doll is demonically possessed by a dead child named Annabelle. Hip hip hooray. The doll has portrayed some horrifying and very evil behaviour, and the Warrens were given the doll by a student nurse who simply couldn't handle having her around anymore. Annabelle the doll was the inspiration behind the scary movies The Conjuring and Annabelle Creations, so a pretty scary plushie. Visitors at the museum are warned profusely not to even touch the glass cage that the creepy old smiling Annabelle sits in. You don't want to find out what kind of malevolence she could unleash if you break the rules. Moving on to number 9, we have a vampire coffin. It seems that the vampire coffin on display in the Occult Museum was found by the Warrens themselves and was used by a real-life modern-day vampire. But was it though? Let's take a look at it, shall we? I mean, there really is rather a lot going on here. There's a window with a creepy doll head on a plinth. Apparently the plinth is important. There's some kind of mounted devil head too, a spooky necklace, and a picture of the alleged vampire in question. And like, what is happening at the top there? Also, is the vampire who this belongs to pissed that his bed's been stolen? Like, I would be. Is he gonna come looking for it? So many questions. Coming into number 8, we have child gravestones. Okay, but like, actually what is wrong with the Warrens? I get it, Occult Museum and everything, but do we not draw the line at tombstones of children? Apparently, we do not. These wee little graves can actually be found outside the main museum, you know, just to like create a more total experience in the walk up to the building. It is said that the graves on display belong to children who were used in ritual sacrifice for satanic spells.
In our number 7 spot today, we have the Crying Children paintings. These paintings were a series created by an Italian painter who was known as Giovanni Breglin, but his name was really Bruno Amarillo. Bruno was born in Venice in 1911 and fought in World War II, which ended up being the inspiration for a lot of his paintings. During his time in the war, he saw a lot of suffering, and this is where he got the idea for the series of Crying Children paintings. After the paintings were sold, there began to be reports of fires in all of the places where the paintings were held. While this could have just been a strange coincidence, the weirdest part is that the paintings always remained intact while everything else around them was burned. This quickly became the most talked about thing and was on the front of every newspaper, and the paintings quickly gained the nickname Diablo. It caused the paintings to end up being replicated and mass-produced, but none of the replicas hold quite the same powers as the originals. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Goddess statue. The Goddess of Death statue is also known as the Woman from the Lem. This artifact was made out of limestone, and it was created somewhere around 3500 BC and was found in Cyprus in 1878. Over the years, it has belonged to many different families who all have been ruined and dismantled by death. After the first 6 years of ownership, all 7 members of the first family died. It then moved on to a second owner, and after 4 years, death began to come to him and his family as well. There was then a long period where it was unclaimed, but once the third family finally got a hold of it, several members of that family began to die as well. The third family ended up turning it over to the Royal Scottish Museum because it is, of course, an ancient relic, but legend goes that the museum curator who initially took care of it died within a year of receiving it. So maybe the curse lives on. In our number 5 spot today, we have the goblet. This is an item that was found in a museum, but it was a museum of specifically haunted things, so I feel like it still counts. This goblet is said to have been used for rituals of necromancy, which poses a few questions for me personally. What did they put in it and presumably drink out of it? Holy water? Wine? Blood? All the above? Who knows? Either way, here's the real kicker. This goblet was of course for sale on eBay because why not? And the seller was claiming that it has an amazing energy to it. Okay. What kind of energy? Well, they said that some find it strangely positive, but that many perceive it as negative and malignant. Alright. Don't think I'll be bidding on that auction, to be perfectly honest. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Surrey Ghost Car. On December 11th, 2002, a call came into the Surrey Police Department. The caller reported that they had just seen a car lose control and run off the road and then presumably crash. It was, of course, an emergency call, but not necessarily anything out of the ordinary. That was until authorities got to the location and realized that they couldn't find any evidence of a crash. They kept searching and ended up finding a maroon-colored car that was nose down in a ditch nearby. nearby, but this car was covered in so much undergrowth that it must have been here for months. This meant that somehow this crash went undetected for 5 months, and worst of all, so did the body that lay nearby. Using dental records, they were able to identify the body as a man who had been wanted for robbery since July of that year. It is said that the sighting of the car leaving the road was a ghostly replay of the events that had taken place 5 months prior. In our number 3 spot today, we have doorknobs. To be honest, I wasn't expecting to ever hear about haunted doorknobs, but this might just be a thing that really does exist. These doorknobs were listed on eBay, and the seller explained that they were once the knobs seen on the doors at an asylum, which truly lands on the list of creepiest places in the world. Considering everything that is said to have gone on at places like these, it truly doesn't surprise me one bit. We're looking at you, lobotomies and other horrific mental health treatments of the past. These doorknobs must have quite literally opened the door to some terrifying things that I'm sure many of us would prefer to not even think about. According to the eBay listing, the asylum that they came from after it was abandoned is said to have had strange whispers, occurrences, and horrifying noises coming from it. This is all to say that maybe that trip to Home Depot is better than buying antique. Just this one time. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Nightmare Doll. Haunted dolls like Annabelle and even Robert get a lot of hype, but they certainly aren't the only dolls with stories of curses and hauntings behind them. This Nightmare Doll was listed for sale on eBay, and according to the seller, the doll is possessed by a Dybbuk, which is a malicious demon or entity. The seller of the doll is actually someone who apparently specializes in selling these sort of paranormal items that no one wants anymore. The seller explained that the owner of the doll bought it at an antique shop, and while they did tell her about what the doll held, she didn't know what the word meant, so she took it anyways. Soon after purchasing it, she realized that anyone who came into contact with the doll was then plagued with terrifying nightmares and occurrences of these sort of shadow people. She only could handle this all for a couple of months before she handed the doll over for it to be sold and moved far, far away from her. In our number 1 spot today, we have the carving. This is a carving that was sold on eBay in 2013, which the sellers claimed had been in their family for over 60 years. It was originally found by the seller's grandparents in the attic of their home. This was back in the 1950s, and when it was found, the grandparents asked the original owners of the home where it had come from. They explained that it was a gift from a prisoner who is said to have carved it. The seller explained in their post that, quote, anyone who comes in contact with it seems to feel strange or creeped out by it. The statue mostly didn't cause too much harm. That was until the seller tried to put it on display in their home. Once it was taken out of an old box and placed in a cabinet, strange occurrences began. They said that, quote, I began to experience the television turning off and on, lights coming on in rooms no one was in, the kids' toys coming on in the middle of the night in their room at 3 a.m. At the end of the day, despite the troubles this person had with the statue, they still ended up selling it for $85. Not a bad deal. Get rid of a demon and gain some cash for it.
Number 10. Dybbuk box. In Jewish folklore, a Dybbuk is an evil spirit. Supposedly, someone accidentally summoned the demon while using a homemade Ouija board, but managed to trap it inside the wine cabinet. The Dybbuk box came to light in 2001 when Kevin Mannis purchased it and started having terrible nightmares. He then decided to gift the cabinet to his mother, who suffered a stroke the very day she received it. Not just this, but every person who ever owned that wine cabinet has reported experiencing horrible events. The last owner of the cabinet, Jason Haxton, found out the box possesses a spirit of a malicious Jewish creature called a Dybbuk, who has the ability to haunt and possess the living. Jason not only had nightmares, but also developed a strange skin disease and began coughing up blood. At that point, Jason contacted his local rabbis and sealed the Dybbuk back in the box. Jason later, wanting nothing to do with the box, gave the cabinet to Zach to display it in his museum. You actually may have heard of this box before, because in 2018, fans of rapper Post Malone claimed that his spat of bad luck was caused by his contact with the cabinet. Number 9. Charles Manson's cremated ashes. Charles Manson was a criminal who created a cult called the Manson family. It was active in California in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Now, the group consisted of approximately 100 followers who had lived an unconventional lifestyle and frequently used psychoactive substances. Now, the members of the cult believed that he was Jesus Jesus Christ and followed everything he did. Now, some members committed a series of 9 deaths at 4 locations in July and August of 1969. In 1971, Manson was convicted of first-degree homicide and conspiracy to commit homicide for the deaths of 7 people, including the film actress Sharon Tate. When Charles Manson died, his body was cremated, and some of his followers actually took fragments of his ashes to keep as a memento. This led to such creations as the Ryan Almighty blood paintings of Manson, in which the eyes were filled in with Charles's own cremains. Painted in Ryan's own blood, the artistry has to be appreciated, but the morbidness of the painting with the cremated ashes included makes for a unique piece to say the least. This very painting is on display at the museum along with other Charles Manson memorabilia, including a prison-worn outfit, Manson's own TV, and even more ashes in a display case along with Manson's dentures. Number 8. Love Ranch Bed. Zach acquired the bed and bedroom furniture of Bunny Ranch and Love Ranch owner Dennis Hoff, which eerily includes the mattress Dennis died on. Dennis died in that room of a heart attack on October 16, 2018. He was 72 years old. Now, this just so happens to be the same mattress Lamar Odom was on when he overdosed 3 years prior in October 2015. Safe to say, a lot of bad things have happened on that mattress. Zach says they never swapped out the mattress in the Love Ranch room, and now folks at the legal Nevada brothel believe it's cursed. Zach said that he was told that the bed was cursed, so of course he wanted to add it to his collection.
Coming into number 7, we have the 2 deaf dolls. These dolls are a little bit different from Annabelle, as they are said to be voodoo dolls or witch dolls. Sure, they look creepy. I mean, one of them has a noose around its head for goodness sake. The other one has had its eyes gouged out, which isn't better by any means. The story behind them is even creepier, because you see, voodoo dolls are used to bring real harm to real people. The noose on the neck of one of the dolls probably indicates that someone died, and gouged out eyes, well, that isn't a great sign either. It seems that a doll collector came across these dolls and brought them home. I would leave them very much where they were. On bringing them home, she found that her son's health began deteriorating rapidly. Now, it seems that some of the witch's voodoo doll magic had retained and picked the boy as its new vessel. The collector contacted the Warrens, who removed the dolls, after which the boy recovered. But the story continues. It seems that a visitor to the museum broke the rules and touched one of the dolls and was later involved in a horrifying accident. This is what happens when you touch the creepy dolls. Coming into number 6, we have shrunken heads. Okay, do you know what shrunken heads are? Because if you don't, let me break it to you. They are the real decapitated corpse heads of dead people that have been prepared as tribal trophies. Sounds great. To make a shrunken head, you have to remove the skull meticulously, and then you sew the eyes and mouth and nose shut. All of the brain matter and fat from the head is also removed. A ball is stuffed in the head to keep the shape, and then the head is boiled with water-containing tannins. Ugh. Head soup. No. The head is then dried with hot rocks and buried in sand, usually for a year. Great. So in the Occult Museum there are real decapitated heads, and these ones have been used for tribal magic rituals. There is some seriously bad juju associated with some of these heads. Coming into number 5, we have the Summoning Mirror. A classic haunted mirror. Mirrors have long been associated with the spirit world. Indeed, legends like Candyman and Bloody Mary seem to suggest that spirits can be summoned from paranormal planes using a mirror. This isn't just any mirror at the Occult Museum. Of course it isn't. This is a special conjuring mirror used to bring forth spirits and demons. The only thing is though, you don't know if what answers your call will be a good spirit or a bad spirit. To me, I have to say the mirror is pretty beautiful and lavish, like I'd like that in my bedroom, although maybe without the side of spirits popping up. They can stay out. Coming into number 4, we have the haunted organ. Who this organ belongs to, we simply don't know, but according to the Occult Museum, it starts playing itself at random intervals. Ooh. It is thought that the organ is haunted by a particularly musical spirit, and that the instrument provides a macabre soundtrack to the witching hour at the museum. On top of the organ sits all kinds of other creepy stuff, a sign which reads "Restless Spirit", a hand holding a small ball, a bust of a child, a big frog, a selection of spooky owls. Honestly, wonder how the organ feels about all the clutter. Marie Kondo needs to get in, sort it out. Coming into number 3, we have a brick from the most haunted house in England. ground. The story of the Borley Rectory is actually pretty chilling. The building was constructed in 1862 in Victorian times in Essex, and rumours of its haunting were rife from the very beginning. The building was severely damaged by a fire in 1939. Ghost hunters claim the activity is related to a Benedictine monastery built in the area in 1362. A monk was said to have been executed and a nun bricked alive in the walls of the convent after the pair had an affair. It is thought that the nun and the monk haunt the grounds and had a hand in the fire that tore through the rectory building on the site. Before the fire, it was said the owners of the house had found human bones on the property and experienced poltergeist activity. Despite the fire rendering the building inhabitable, hauntings in the ruins continue. Now, of course, good old Ed and Lorraine had to go for a jaunt there, and they took a token back to the museum with them, a brick from the ruins. Was it one of the bricks that was used to keep the nun in the wall? Does it carry any of the bad energy from its horrible history? Like, possibly. Coming into number 2, we have the Wood Dweller. Ugh, the story behind this object honestly fills me with fear. So the story goes that the satanic idol was found in the woods by a guy who was out hunting. The man said that he walked up to the doll and had a horrible feeling. Have a listen to what the Warren Museum had to say about it.
He didn't know why. He looked at it, it was so spooky to him. He got this feeling of dread and this feeling of horror. And he said he was like sitting next to it, like just almost lost all his strength.
Honestly, that's terrifying. It scared a grown man, a huntsman. All of his energy was just drained and he said he was filled with dread. Ugh. He said he turned away from the idol and then he saw a man wearing a black cloak walking in step opposite to him. It seemed that the horned idol is used for satanic rituals for summoning evil spirits. The man did make his way out of the forest and told the Warrens about the idol. Of course, Ed and Lorraine went to seek it. Lorraine Warren was particularly affected by the piece and said that one of the demonic spirits inside the idol sent her into a catatonic state for days. She even claimed it made her levitate. Does this sound like something should be on display to the public? To me, no. Put it away. Okay, this needs to be put away. It freaked me out harder than Annabelle, and I don't know who's gonna make a movie about this, but they should. We have the heart-stopping Shadow Doll at number 1. Let's have a look at this Shadow Doll, shall we? Honestly, my eyes. Take it away. This doll is said to have been created by black magic and is comprised of human and animal bones. Hip hip hurrah. The life-size doll is labelled as a doll of shadows and hexes, and if you ever visit the museum, you should be careful not to look the doll in the eye, for it seems that it has the ability to visit you in your nightmares, giving you a fright so hard you could have a heart attack. Apparently, even so much as photographing this doll could expose you to its hex, so be careful. The Warrens say that the doll was given to them by a couple who found it in an antique store. I know, right? Who wouldn't look at this doll and think, what a beautiful vintage piece worth taking home? Obviously, just ignoring the warning signs of the doll's demonic fashion sense and the soul-sucky open mouth and the gormless eyes. Yep, the couple took it home and began experiencing terrible sleep paralysis and nightmares, and at this point, I'm thinking, who do they have to blame but themselves? The husband even woke up with scratches on his back. Who do you gift a horrible demonic doll to? The Warrens, of course.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the statue. This statue, or bust, is said to have been made by a man named William who enjoyed making these sorts of things out of clay. Unfortunately, however, legend goes that this specific statue was made on the same day that William was crushed to death during a tragic work accident. A co-worker of his who showed up to work the following day found that this statue was still there, so he took it home with him. For a while, he kept the statue hidden, but when he took it out to display it, things started to go awry. It started with just a heavy and uninviting feeling, but soon things escalated. He began to hear doors slamming on their own, only to go and find them wide open. If anything was placed next to the statue, the next time he would find it completely shattered, and at one point he found the statue in a position that he never placed it in. He finally had the last straw when he saw a dark, shadowy figure, or a sort of mist, moving around near where he placed the statue. After this, he was so spooked he had a friend list the item for him on eBay because he just simply needed to get rid of it. In our number 9 spot today, we have Uluru Rock. Uluru Rock is a large sandstone formation that is located in the southern part of the Northern Territory in Australia. It is sometimes known as Ayers Rock, but regardless of what it is called, this area is sacred for the people indigenous to the land. This is part of the reason that those who visit the rock are asked to not take anything from the site. Despite this, people of course still choose to smuggle pieces of the rock out of the area and home with them. Other than the bad karma and just in general feeling like a bad person for doing the one thing you're asked not to do. As it turns out, this rock may hold a more sinister secret. Those who have stolen rocks from the Uluru have experienced things like extremely bad luck, severe illness, and sometimes even the death of those they love. The curse these rocks hold is seemingly so bad that it is very common for the company that runs the tours of the formation to receive letters of apology that contain the stolen rocks. Apparently these letters come so often, at least one a day is expected. Maybe this is a weird coincidence, but it seems to be happening a little too often for that to be the explanation. In our number 8 spot today we have the beds. Back in 1986, couple Deborah and Alan Tullman moved into a new home with their children in Wisconsin. The following year they bought a second-hand set of bunk beds for their kids for $100, but as it would turn out, they bought much more than they had originally bargained for. When they brought the bunk beds into their home, they clearly must have brought something else along with it. It started when they began to see strange shapes in their home, and they would hear disembodied voices that, despite how hard they tried, they could not find the source of. They found themselves fighting with clocks and radios that turned on by themselves. They would find furniture that had moved seemingly all by itself, and sometimes they'd even see an apparition of an old woman. In the end, they not only threw the beds in the landfill, but they also moved from the home just to be safe. As far as we know, the beds remained in the landfill, but who's to say for sure?
Coming in at number 7, tombstones. When it comes to items involved in a satanic ritual, I am sure that the Warrens managed to corner that market. I mean, are there other haunted museums? Absolutely, but theirs is really the one that started it all. One of these allegedly satanically involved items you can find hiding about are a series of tombstones that the Warrens claim were used in a dark occult ritual by those who work on the darker side of the paranormal. However, what makes these tombstones especially creepy is that they reportedly belong to rather young people. And so the Warrens had reason to believe that the young people were not only used as a sacrifice, but then their tombstones were used to finalize the ritual. So, just all around very dark and evil stuff. Coming in at number 6, a brick. It's not all Hollywood-based sensations inside the museum. In fact, one of their most prized and feared possessions looks about as plain as you could imagine. It's a brick, like from a house. But of course, this is no ordinary brick. It's in an occult museum after all. This brick in particular was from the Borley Rectory, a now famous building that was demolished in 1944 after it was badly damaged in a fire. But what made it such a sensation was that prior to the 1939 fire, it had long been rumored to be the most haunted building in all of the United Kingdom, which is a pretty tall order considering how many allegedly haunted buildings span across the UK. Allegedly, the night of the fire, there were over 2,000 reports of paranormal activity, including floating bricks thought to have been possessed by a poltergeist. So, if rumors are true, that would make this brick probably the most terrifying brick ever. Which, I mean, I don't know how much competition it really has there, but still, it's a demonic brick. It's terrifying no matter what. Coming in at number 5, pearls of death. While it's probably a pretty safe blanket rule that you shouldn't go around touching much of anything you find in Ed and Lorraine's demonic collection, some stuff is probably a little worse than others, and this next one falls into the latter category. Notoriously one of the most dangerous items found inside the museum, the Pearls of Death is a cursed necklace said to do exactly as the name suggests. Allegedly, anyone who dares place them around their neck will be choked and suffocated to death. Now, my question about this necklace is it like a Frodo and the Ring style situation where it will call to you, slowly infecting your brain through mind control until it practically forces you to place it around your neck? Or does it just wait for someone to unknowingly do it before it unleashes all hell on the victim? I guess I will never know, because you can bet I won't be testing it out for myself. Coming in at number 4, the Conjuring Mirror. Despite what the name would have you believe, the Conjuring Mirror actually has really nothing to do with the Conjuring movies. Instead, this haunted mirror gets its name from the fact that it was, at one point, allegedly used to summon or conjure spirits. once in the possession of a man named Stephen Zellner. Legend has it that Stephen practiced a kind of witchcraft known as catoprotromancy, I probably butchered that, in order to see into the future and seek out revenge on his enemies. However, the more that Stephen used the mirror, the more and more corrupt he and his use of the magic became. Eventually, it's said the evil spirits he had conjured to do his bidding became too powerful to control and turned on the very person who had summoned them. Soon, Stephen began fearing for his life, so as a last resort, he decided to reach out to a local priest to see if the evil spirits could be exorcised from the home. But instead, the priest put him in touch with Ed and Lorraine. Upon their arrival at Stephen's home, they immediately knew Stephen was in grave trouble. And so to keep him safe, they performed a reverse incantation spell to seal up all the spirits back inside the mirror from which they had been conjured. Afterwards, Stephen begged them to take the mirror away from him, and that is how it came to live in Ed and Lorraine's museum. However, don't get too comfortable. Despite the spell they cast, Ed and Lorraine still claim to have experienced many terrifying moments with the spirits they angered from trapping inside this mirror. And who knows what could bring them back out. Coming in at number 3, the Shadow Doll. When it comes to creepy dolls, I'll be honest, it doesn't take much to freak me out. But with that being said, there is definitely a very good reason why the Shadow Doll is one of the most feared possessions in the entire museum. Now, what starts off this seemingly endless list of creepy things about this doll is that there is no definitive answer as to why it was created or who created it. But according to Ed and Lorraine's files, it was made using both human and animal bones and was absolutely used in satanic rituals. So it is definitely possessed by some less than ideal company. Said to have been found in an antique shop by a couple, they began to think something was wrong after they kept waking up night after night covered in inexplicable scratches. But it wasn't until the doll began showing up in their nightmares, telling them that she was going to kill them, that they decided to get rid of the terrifying toy. And good thing they did too. Legend has it that if someone takes a picture of this doll, she will visit you in your dreams and kill you in your sleep. Just one more reason to never trust a creepy doll. Coming in at number 2, a satanic idol. As the story goes, in 1991, a hunter was walking through the woods on the lookout for deer when he began to feel an overwhelming sense of paranoia, like he was being watched or something. At that very moment, he turned around to see this creepy doll leaned up against a tree, staring at him, and he could have sworn that it appeared out of nowhere. Immediately, the hunter knew he should not be here, and so he began walking as quickly as he could to find a way out of the forest. Then, suddenly, an old man dressed in all black robes appeared beside him. He looked like a priest, the hunter thought, but something wasn't quite right. Every step he took, the priest matched him, and eventually he became so freaked out, he actually debated shooting at the priest with his arrow to scare him off. But instead, he decided to ask the priest how to get out of the forest. But creepily, the priest did not speak. Instead, he pointed off into another direction, turned around, and left the man alone once again. Now, luckily, the hunter escaped, and the following day, after telling his friends the strange events, they suggested that he reach out to Ed and Lorraine. Upon telling them his story, they explained that the priest was a well-known leader of a satanic cult, and that the creepy doll he had encountered was actually an idol used for ritual purposes. However, the Warrens, being who they were, wanted to get this idol for the museum, and so Ed ventured into the forest, found the doll, and brought it back home. Soon after, however, strange things began happening. Allegedly, one time Ed was speaking with Lorraine, turned away for a second, looked back, and she was suddenly 30 feet away and passed out on the ground. He called the ambulance, and she spent the next 3 days in hospital in and out of consciousness. And according to Ed, she actually levitated while in the hospital. The Warrens always firmly believed that the satanic priest was working through the doll Ed had taken from the forest and was trying to punish them for taking it. Let's just hope no one was ever hospitalized after that. And last up in our number 1 spot, Annabelle. You didn't really think I was gonna do a list about haunted things found in Ed and Lorraine's museum and not bring up the famous Annabelle, did you? Although nowadays she is locked up tight, this wasn't always the case. Back in 1970, Annabelle was gifted to a nursing student named Donna. But it didn't take long before Donna and her roommate Angie knew that something was off. After about a month, the roommates began finding disturbing messages lying around their apartment, warning them to help Lou. Lou was one of their friends who had apparently warned the girls of the doll since day 1. Eventually things got so creepy that the woman contacted a medium who told them not to be afraid, that the doll was merely possessed by a young girl named Annabelle Higgins who had died on the property years prior. The medium advised them that Annabelle felt safe here and would like to stay, so they agreed. But that was all a part of the demon's plan. Not long after, Lou stayed over, and when he awoke from a nightmare, he found he couldn't move his body. And then, like straight out of a horror movie, he says Annabelle walked up his body and strangled him until he passed out. After that, the girls contacted a priest who put them in touch with paranormal investigators, Ed and Lorraine Warren, who discredited the medium and said it was, in fact, a very dangerous demon possessing this doll. However, even now, despite being locked up, the doll should be deeply feared. It was reported once that a man who visited the museum mocked the doll and only a few days later died after losing control of his motorbike. So, yeah, she very well could be the most terrifying doll on the planet.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Anna Baker's wedding dress. In 1836, a man named Elias Baker purchased a mansion in Altoona, Pennsylvania and moved his small family in. Elias's oldest daughter was named Anna, and when she fell in love with a steel worker, things took a dark turn. Anna's father didn't want her dating this man, but she kept doing it in secret. The story goes that Anna and the man planned a secret wedding and were going to elope. Unfortunately, Elias found out and freaked out. He apparently purchased this steel mill that the man worked for and then forced him to have to move to an entirely different city so as to prevent him from being able to continue seeing Anna. Anna, of course, was furious with her father, and I'm sure this was only made worse by his decision to offer other men to her, to which she of course declined because that's just weird. Anna instead locked herself in a room with her wedding dress that she never got to wear. Anna unfortunately never married after that and spent the rest of her life being terribly upset about the whole incident. After her death, it is said that her anger and despair ended up going into the wedding dress. Members of the Baker family reported seeing the dress in different places around the house, despite no one moving it themselves. Some have even reported seeing Anna's spirit dressed in the gown around the house as well. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Golden Eagle. This car was a 1964 Dodge 330 limited edition, and it has been blamed for the death of around 14 people, which, like, how do we even let it get that out of control? It is said that the car started out as a police car originally, but there were 3 officers assigned to this car who all ended up taking their lives and other people's lives in horrible ways. Not in the car, but still super weird that this all seemed to happen after they had been using the cars for work. Because of this strange correlation, it ended up being sold off to another man. Throughout the 80s and 90s, it is said that because of the rumored cursed car, it became a point of interest for vandals. People began vandalizing the car only to meet their own untimely fates, which were all met in strange ways. For example, it was said that one vandal died from being struck by lightning. It is said that the curse is so strong that one person decided to merely touch the car, and it sent him into madness as he went on to commit atrocious crimes after that I cannot even detail here on YouTube. The car now belongs to Wendy Allen, who supposedly collects and decorates haunted cars for a living, so it seems as though it's finally found its home, far, far, far away from anyone else. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Blarney Stone. For hundreds of years, the Blarney Stone has resided within Blarney Castle, which is near Cork, Ireland. The stone is a piece of limestone, and legend says that those who give the stone a smooch will then be given the gift of the gab. This little smooch can bestow show the power of being able to talk your way out of any situation, which would be incredibly useful, but there are those who always try to indulge in too much of a good thing. The issues start when you attempt to take a piece of the stone, no matter how small, away from its home. Those who don't follow the rules and take the stone end up being cursed with bad luck. Every year the castle receives parcels from greedy tourists who tried their luck at stealing portions of the stone. These parcels are returned with the intention of lifting the curse of misfortune. It is said that once the stone is returned, the curse will be lifted, which is most definitely good news. So I guess the moral of this curse, however, is to not be greedy and to just follow the rules.
Coming in at number 7, the Dark Mirror. Found in the Museum of the Paranormal and Occult, this dark mirror is said to show you much more than you will ever want to see. The Mobile Museum obtained this cursed mirror from the original owner, who claimed to have purchased it while attending a psychic fair in the Columbus area. Now, there are lots of alleged cursed mirrors out there, some said to be haunted by demons who escape in the night, torturing whoever possesses the cursed glass, which, don't get me wrong, is definitely terrifying. However, this particular object has more of an eerie, foreboding quality that is sure to send anyone who looks into it into a spiral. According to the museum, those that dare gaze into the cursed mirror claim to be struck with very upsetting visions. Some even reported ghastly sightings, such as their own corpse staring back at them. Coming in at number 6 is Einstein's brain. In the famous Medical Mutter Museum in Philadelphia is none other than the brain of world-famous theoretical physicist Albert Einstein. Or at least parts of it are there. And almost as peculiar as having sections of his brain preserved in glass slides and displayed is the story of how the genius brain wound up at the museum in the first place. Apparently, after he died in 1955, pathologist Thomas Harvey was the one to perform his autopsy. But unbeknownst to the family, he decided to remove Einstein's brain for preservation in the hopes that scientists of the future could study it to determine what made Einstein so intelligent. Eventually, after much reluctance, Einstein's son agreed to allow the brain to be kept under one very strict condition, that it be used for scientific research. Now, with permission from his next of kin, Harvey went forward, slicing the brain into 240 pieces, making sure to preserve each piece very carefully. Over the next few decades, Harvey would send bits and pieces to researchers upon request, and eventually donated the rest to this very museum it resides in today. Coming in at number 5 is Annabelle. Okay, I know we're all pretty aware of the cursed demon doll, but I just couldn't help it. I mean, she is one of the most terrifying things you can find in a museum after all. Although nowadays she's locked up tight in the famous paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren's Occult Museum, this wasn't always the case. Back in 1970, Annabelle was gifted to a nursing student named Donna, but it didn't take long before Donna and her roommate Angie knew that something was off. After about a month, the roommates began finding disturbing messages lying around their apartment, warning them to help Lou. Lou was one of their friends who had apparently warned the girls of the doll since day one. Eventually, things got so creepy that the women contacted a medium who told them to not be afraid, that the doll was merely possessed by a young girl named Annabelle Higgins, who had died on the property years prior. The medium advised them that Annabelle felt really safe here and would like to stay, so they agreed. But that was all part of the demon's plan. Not long after, Lou stayed over, and when he awoke from a nightmare, he found he couldn't move his body. And then, like straight out of a horror movie, he says Annabelle walked up his body and strangled him until he passed out. After that, the girls contacted a priest who put them in touch with the paranormal investigators, Ed and Lorraine Warren, who discredited the medium and said it was, in fact, a dangerous demon possessing the doll. However, even now, despite being locked up, the doll should be deeply feared. It was reported one man who visited the museum mocked the doll and only a few days later died after losing control of his motorbike. Next up at number 4, the Hands Resist Him painting. As far as paintings go, The Hands Resist Him, created by William Stoneham in 1972, is probably considered one of the most haunted pieces in the whole world. Stoneham claims the inspiration for the piece came from an old photograph from his early years, and somehow, over time, the painting landed in the hands of a California couple. As the story goes, the sellers who auctioned it on eBay in 2000 kept the painting in their 4-year-old's room. But one morning, the girl claimed that the people in the painting were not letting her sleep at night. So, for the girl's peace of mind, they set up a motion sensor camera to prove that no monsters were coming out of the painting. However, to their surprise, they captured some truly frightening activity. They awoke to find photos of the boy crawling from the painting, and others where the doll's face had changed to a very angry disposition while holding a weapon. Not only that, it's also rumored to have been responsible for the death of 3 men who came into contact with it at one time or another. Today, you can find it in the back room of Smith's Perception Fine Art Gallery in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But be warned, those that witness the painting often complain of nausea or extreme physical pain while in its presence. Coming in at number 3, Ed Gein's Cauldron. So, a little backstory. Ed Gein, aka the Butcher of Plainfield, was a killer and body snatcher between 1947 to 1957. Gein grew up very religious. His mother was a devout Lutheran who taught her sons that women were inherently promiscuous and instruments of the devil. Gein became very attached to his mother, arguably a little too much, and after his father and brother both died, Gein became his mother's primary caregiver. However, after she died in 1945, something snapped and he became a totally different person. He began to visit the graveyards at night, digging up middle-aged women that had similarities to his deceased mother, before bringing the bodies home and mutilating them, using their skin to make covers for his furniture, masks out of their faces, or using the bones for decoration and dishes. Even creepier was when he began creating an entire woman's suit from various different exhumed bodies, as he wanted to be able to become his mother and literally be in her skin. It is believed that this cauldron was used by Gein to not only store the stolen body parts, but primarily to boil them so that the skin could be removed from the bone more easily. Nowadays, this cursed cauldron is found at the haunted Zach Baggin Museum and is definitely one of the most terrifying things found inside. Next up at number 2, Peter Curtin's head. Inside the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum in Wisconsin is one of the most haunting objects you could come across: the severed head of a dead man. But who's the guy? Well, none other than the Vampire of Dusseldorf, Peter Curtin. To give you a bit of context, Peter Curtin is widely considered one of the most cruel, sick, and deranged men of the 20th century. Between 1913 to 1929, he was a rampant killer and predator, responsible for the death of 10 people, on top of another 31 attempted killings among his 68 crimes total. While in court, he received the nickname Vampire of Dusseldorf for reasons I'm sure you can imagine, and after freely confessing to all his crimes with no remorse for his cruelties, he was sentenced to execution via the guillotine. But his atrocities did not end there. In fact, shortly before he was executed, he famously turned to his psychiatrist and asked, quote, "Tell me, after my head is chopped off, will I still be able to hear, at least for a moment, the sound of my own blood gushing from the stump of my neck? That would be the pleasure to end all pleasures." Following his beheading, his head was then bisected and his brain was removed in order to be studied. The rest of his head, however, was mummified, transferred to the United States, and put on display for the world to see. And last up today in the number 1 spot, Nabrok. In 17th century Iceland, there was a well-known witchcraft ritual where people would create pants out of the skin of the deceased in hopes of a better life for them and their families moving forward. Called Nabrok, meaning corpse breeches, or more commonly referred to as necropants nowadays, the pants were made as a talisman to magically summon more money for whoever made them. However, there was a catch. The man in question had to have consented before death, and the deed could only be done after the burial had taken place. Once loved ones said their goodbyes, you were free to dig up the corpses and peel off the skin, being careful to keep it all in one piece. It was believed that no holes or tears could occur, otherwise the power of the necropants would be lost. But disgustingly, it didn't stop there. Once you had fashioned the pants and put them on your person, the ritual demanded you head out into the village and steal 1 coin from a destitute widow. From there, the coin was to be placed in the groin of the pants, along with a traditional Icelandic sigil for the ritual to be complete. There is only one known pair of such pants remaining today, and it's held in the Museum of Icelandic Sorcery and Witchcraft. And if you ask me, they are just about the most terrifying thing that I can think of. Starting us off at number 10 is the death van. During the mid to late 90s, Dr. Jack Kevorkian became a notorious figure after being convicted for second-degree homicide for his role in the voluntary euthanasia of over 130 patients. Through the trial, his reputation earned him the nickname Dr. Death, and he ended up being sentenced to 10 years for his deeds. Now, despite the negative narrative, the doctor always fought back, claiming to be aiding the terminally ill end their lives on their own terms, and had set up an old 1968 Volkswagen van to get the job done. Now, whether you believe he was innocent or not, the fact of the matter is that at least 130 people died in this van, so naturally it has developed quite the reputation as a haunted object. So much so that at one point in time it was being sold on eBay for nearly $4,000. However, nowadays you can find it at the eternally haunted Zach Baggins Museum, where the ghosts of those who died are said to wander the museum, spooking visitors at all hours of the day. Coming up next at number 9 is Wheelie. Some say it's a stuffed dog, while others say it looks more like a sheep, but either way, it's an old, creepy, haunted toy from the 19th century that can be found in the Prince Edward Island Museum in Canada. Nicknamed Wheelie due to the creaky wheels the stuffed animal sits on top of, this nearly 200-year-old toy was found lying inside the walls of the Yeo house while construction was underway. According to staff, the disfigured sheep dog toy was simply lying on the ground inside the walls, and so they decided to keep it and put it out on display for their visitors, which would be all well and fine, except for the fact that it very well may have been hidden in a wall for a reason. Apparently, Wheelie is known to wander around all by himself, and is often found hiding in a different spot than where he was left the night before, which, if horror movies have taught me anything, is never a good sign. Coming in at number 8, hair. Now, I will admit this is not a single object that can be found in a haunted museum, but it is definitely an exhibit that will make your skin crawl. Inside the Avanos Hair Museum in Turkey, yes, you heard that right, is literally a floor-to-ceiling cave-like room with countless little snippets of hair surrounding you at every angle. In fact, to be exact, there are 16,000 different hair samples adorning the walls. I'm sure you're wondering how such a museum began in the first place. Well, the common folklore is that a local potter once asked a dying friend to leave him a snippet of her hair to remember her by. The friend obliged and cut a small piece of her locks for the potter. From there, the potter placed the gift in his shop, and apparently this inspired visitors who began following in her footsteps and gifting locks to be displayed in his shop along with the original, until eventually the shop was overrun by hair. And don't worry, if you want in on the fun, or creepiness depending on your feeling about hair, guests are encouraged to leave behind a little sample themselves. Just ask the staff for some scissors and your wishes will be granted.
Number 7. Dr. Jack Kevorkian's van. Jack Kevorkian publicly championed a terminal patient's right to die by physician-assisted suicide embodied in his quote, "Dying is not a crime." It said that he assisted at least 130 patients in ending their lives. For this, he was convicted of homicide in 1999 and was often portrayed in the media with the name of Dr. Death. Jack, who died in 2011, lived out of a van for periods of his life and used it to carry out some of his crimes. Zach found this van and paid $32,500 for the rusty 1968 Volkswagen van, which has been parked in storage at the American Jewelry and Loan Pawn Shop on 8 Mile in Detroit. Now it sits at his museum for all to see. Number 6. Demon House Staircase. From a very intriguing standalone documentary of the same name, the Demon House was an investigation undertaken by Zach and the team at a home in Indiana, where the family claimed that numerous members of the family had been possessed by a spirit. The local police department and even social services within the local area were convinced that the house was some way haunted. From footsteps in the corridor to full-on body possession, the Demon House creeped Zach and the team out more than anything we've witnessed on the show before. Now, Zach actually purchased the home for himself for investigations back in 2014 and used it to film the documentary before bulldozing it entirely in 2016, taking pieces of it, including the staircase, back to the haunted museum. Number 5. The house itself. The mansion housing the museum has reportedly been haunted for years. It was built in 1938 and owned by businessman Cyril S. Wenger, and rumor has it, dark rituals took place in the basement in the 1970s. There was a pentagram found in the basement, and this is where supposedly a young boy was sacrificed. It is some kind of satanic altar supposedly to invoke the spirits down there, and it's an extremely evil place in the house. During the tour, they try to usher people through the basement as quickly as possible because it's so scary. Now, the mansion at one point was turned into a law firm where strange occurrences continued before the place was purchased by Zach and was eventually converted into Zach Bagans' The Haunted Museum. Number 4. Bela Lugosi Mirror. Hollywood star and Dracula actor Bela Lugosi is one of the world's most famous horror actors, but did you know that he once owned a mirror believed to be haunted? It is reported that he was obsessed with practicing a form of clairvoyance, which would involve him staring into inanimate objects to try and conjure messages from spirits. One such object reportedly used by the actor for such practice was a mirror, which hung in Bela's Hollywood Hills home. Zach was given the mirror by the niece of lawyer and B-movie producer Frank Saltry, who formerly lived in the home once owned by Bela. However, Frank tragically died at the home in 1982, and following his death, the producer's family inherited the mirror. Soon after bringing the mirror home, though, the family began to notice that paranormal activity began to occur in their own home. Believing Bela's own practices and her uncle's death to have affected the mirror, she later took the object to paranormal investigator Zach. After taking the mirror from Frank's niece, the star also encountered his own paranormal experiences around the mirror when he investigated his own museum for a 2017 episode of Ghost Adventures. This included seeing a ball of light that appeared on the opposite wall of the mirror, which Zach said traveled across the room and went inside the mirror. Now that sounds extremely haunted to me. Number 3. Ed Gein Cauldron. Ed Gein ended the lives of people and was a grave robber. He created costumes, furniture, and other keepsakes from the bodies of his victims. A police raid on his house turned up masks literally made from human faces, a belt of nipples, and a corset created from a skin torso. To be clear, he never wore these costumes when ending people's lives. Instead, he donned them in the privacy of his home. Now, some masks appeared to be mummified, almost dried out, while others were more carefully preserved. A few had lipstick applied and looked more lifelike, and 4 had been stuffed with paper and hung on the wall of his bedroom, almost like hunting trophies. Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs, and Norman Bates were all based on Ed. Zach paid $2,800 at an auction to take possession of the 25-gallon cauldron Ed used to discard his victims' entrails when he gutted them. The thing had been sitting in a Wisconsin woman's home, used as a flower pot ever since Ed's 1984 death in prison. When she died, her son wisely believed the cauldron was cursed and wanted it gone, so now it's Zach's. Number 2. Peggy the Doll. Warning, looking into this doll's eyes can cause you to have health issues or even get haunted. Please watch at your own risk. Now Peggy the doll is a 3-foot tall doll that has a blonde hair bob with glassy blue eyes and is considered to be the most haunted and dangerous doll in the world. After being purchased at a car boot sale, the owner began having nightmares and felt as though she was being haunted by the doll. She contacted Jane Harris, a paranormal and haunted doll investigator, and eventually sent the doll to her. Jane and her team of psychics began working with the doll, running experiments, or having paranormal sessions with it, and began posting photos and videos of the doll online. That is when she began to receive comments from people who had seen the video, and immediately after viewing began to have chest pain, nausea, and/or crippling headaches. So yes, she can haunt you through a screen. Jane has come to the conclusion that the doll is possessed by the spirit of a woman who was born in 1946 who died of a chest-related condition like asthma. Now, Peggy's picture alone is said to cause anxiety, heart attacks, and headaches. Now, Peggy is treated with extreme respect in the museum. She has her own room and a spirit box which is linked up to the room so guests can interact with her if they wish. Many guests have received very strange feedback through the spirit box, including being called out by name and conscious replies to certain questions asked on her guided tours. Now, looking up information about Peggy was absolutely terrifying, and Peggy, if I accidentally looked into your eyes, I am so sorry. And coming in at number 1 is the Devil's Chair. Ed and Lorraine Warren helped exorcise a possessed boy named David Glatzel in the early 80s. They did many exorcisms on David, and Lorraine said that David levitated, ceased breathing for a time, and even demonstrated the supernatural ability of precognition. During his exorcisms, there was also a rocking chair in the room that would allegedly rock on its own, levitate, and even vanish and reappear. David and Lorraine also claimed to have seen the devil sitting in it. Now, Zach purchased the chair to be on display in his museum, but he had been forced to shut down his haunted rocking chair exhibit. Why? Well, Zach and his friend noticed the door to the chair's room slowly creaked open all by itself. Zach also says a light focused on the chair went out when a power cord was mysteriously yanked out of the wall. 2 hours later, he said a woman collapsed, began bawling, and asked, "What is happening to me?" Shortly thereafter, she fell unconscious, according to Zach, who adds that the woman was upstairs directly above the rocking chair exhibit. Later, Zach said 5 of his tour guides throughout the museum started crying uncontrollably. After just a few tours on opening night, the stress was too much for Zach and it forced him to shut it down altogether for the night. For now, Zach says the haunted rocking chair exhibit is closed until further notice, but in the middle of 2022, YouTubers Sam and Colby, who are paranormal investigators that I love, by the way, were given special permission to not only see or touch the chair, but to sit on it. The results were insane, and let me just say they are braver than me, because wow.
Starting us off at number 10, the toy monkey. So it goes without saying that almost everything that is a notable part of the Conjuring series is also a real artifact that the Warrens found along the way. One of these such artifacts, who made an appearance in both The Conjuring and the spin-off Annabelle Comes Home, is the toy monkey. However, if it wasn't already obvious, it's not something to be played with. As Ed tells the reporters in the Conjuring movie, everything you see here is either haunted, cursed, or been used in some kind of ritualistic practice. Nothing is a toy. Not even the toy monkey. So what exactly makes this monkey so scary in real life? Well, allegedly, it is possessed by a terrifying demon who enjoys stalking its victims before eventually killing them. So yeah, not a very nice monkey it seems. Although, nothing you'll find in this museum is terribly friendly. Coming in at number 9, a vampire coffin. As far as creepy looking things go, I have to say this is not one of the scariest looking on the list, but of course, things are not always what they appear. This coffin found at the Warrens Museum is not just called the vampire coffin because of the slightly goofy looking Count Dracula face on the top, but because it was allegedly actually used by a modern day vampire. Now, I'm not saying that this is fictional, but I will say that the details surrounding this are rather few. There is no file stating how modern this modern vampire was, or how it came to be in their possession, but I mean, it's definitely very intriguing. My only question is, where is this so-called vampire now? Was it killed, or is it roaming free? Should we be nervous that a bloodthirsty monster could be on the loose, or was it more of a Twilight vampire situation? I guess we will never know. Coming in at number 8, the famous music box. If you have seen The Conjuring, which by the way, if you haven't, you really should, then you will definitely recognize this next item here. In the film version of the story, the youngest child of the family, April, finds an antique music box in the house and uses it to communicate with the spirit of a young boy named Rory, who was supposedly killed by his mother, Bathsheba, in the 1800s. Now, of course, there are definitely larger things at play throughout the film, but at the end of it, viewers see Ed place the haunted music box inside of the room of artifacts, where it suddenly opens and begins to play its tinny music. Now, in real life, it didn't quite happen like that, but the real music box is safely tucked away in the Warrens Museum. However, legend has it that while it really does contain an evil spirit, it was not properly contained, and so some believe the demon could escape at any moment.
In our number 7 spot today, we have the Terracotta Army. The Terracotta Army was discovered in China, and it is a massive piece of funerary art that is thought to be one of the most massive archaeological finds of modern times. It truly is incredible, and it's something that's been attracting tourists from all over the world since its discovery, but for those who did the discovering, well, things haven't been going so well. In 1974, there were 7 farmers who happened to stumble upon this huge discovery, and you would think that this would come with some kind of a reward, but instead, things have been going terribly for them. Soon after the discovery, the government claimed their farmland. After this, their homes were demolished in order to make way for the exhibition halls and gift shops that were to come. They didn't just get nothing for the discovery, they ended up losing because of it. This is exactly why many people believe that perhaps with the unearthing of this huge piece of art, they also dug up some sort of curse that was buried long ago. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Myrtle's Plantation Mirror. Myrtle's Plantation is located in St. Francisville, Louisiana, and it is said to be one of the most haunted places in the entire world, which seems like that would make a lot of sense. One of the reasons for this spooky reputation is because of a mirror that resides inside of it. It is said that this mirror holds the spirit of Sarah Woodruff and 2 of her children. Legend goes that a woman named Chloe was a slave at the plantation, and she drew up a sort of plan to get revenge on the owners of it, Sarah and her husband. Chloe baked a cake full of poison for them, but in the end, the rest of the family, except for the husband, ended up consuming the poisonous cake. When they passed away, it is said that their spirits went into the only mirror that was uncovered at the time, thus this haunted mirror was born. People who have since visited the plantation have claimed to see the family in the reflection, as well as handprints on the glass, despite the continuous polishing. In our number 5 spot today, we have tap shoes. These tap shoes were listed on eBay, and they are cute as can be. They're black shiny ones with a red bow to tie them together. They look recital ready, but apparently they haven't been used in a long time, and the reason behind it all is chilling. Legend goes that these shoes once belonged to a little girl who loved to dance. At some point, the shoes were retired, and she would go on to meet an untimely fate. The shoes ended up being placed with other old memento items and put in a closet and sort of forgotten about. The shoes, as well as the other items with it, ended up being part of an estate sale years later, but the spirit of the person who passed may have already had some other ideas about what they wanted to happen to the shoes. The seller of the shoes reported that there were mysterious happenings surrounding the shoes as they were clearing out their late aunt's house, the person who was the owner of the shoes. They explained that there were mysterious knocking sounds coming from inside of the closet, almost as if the shoes were tapping by themselves. Also, as it turns out, the house had quite a gruesome history that included killings, so if not the aunt's ghost, perhaps there's another one lurking somewhere in there. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Dark Mirror. This mirror now resides with the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and the Occult, but prior to that, this mirror was received from the owner who had purchased it from a psychic fair. It is believed that this mirror was created sometime around the 1820s or 30s, and it is actually quite beautiful to look at, despite the sinister things it seems to hold. The owner who gave it to the museum explained that every time they peered into the mirror, they saw these extremely upsetting things while looking into the dark mirror's reflection. The museum has said that since they added the mirror to their collection, there have been guests who have also reported the same kind of things. Guests have claimed to see things reflected back at them, like sightings of their own corpse. In our number 3 spot today we have the water jug. Okay, estate sales are weird places. There are weird things there, some quirky items, but this has got to be one of the strangest on a whole bunch of different levels. It's a decorative drinking jug, but it's being held in a miniature cart that's being pulled by a porcelain donkey. I truly could not make that item up, nor could I make up the fact that this kitschy item is also apparently haunted. The seller of this item spoke about how he grew up with the item around as it was always displayed at his grandmother's house and that she always kept it full of water. This was all fine and dandy until after she passed away and he was taking care of the estate and he bumped into it. How was this jug filled with water when no one was there to fill it? He thought that perhaps it was just old leftover water and he just ignored it, but the same thing seemed to happen repeatedly. And it wasn't even like the water level was staying the same. It would increase, seemingly all on its own. The seller decided that this was not an item that they wanted to hold on to and decided it would be best to pass on to someone who is ready to take on this mysterious, strange object. In our number 2 spot today we have Letta the doll. Before we really dive into this one, can we just acknowledge how all cursed dolls look like they would be a cursed doll? I mean, like Annabelle, Robert, they both totally look like dolls that would be holding a secret, scary curse. And this doll, Letta, is just another one that we can add to that list. Letta is a doll that is said to be around 200 years old and is extremely cursed. This doll is called Letta for short, as its full name is Letta Me Out. Really clever. The doll was originally found underneath a house, which definitely feels like the origin story of a haunted doll. The creepy discovery came 47 years ago. Letta still lives with the man who found him. The hauntings of Letta include things like the doll walking around on its own at night, the owners finding objects around the house that have been moved into odd places. Some people have even seen Letta move right in front of their own eyes, and the owner also reports finding little doll-sized scuff marks around the home as well. It is said that this doll once belonged to someone who passed away while holding it, thus their spirit became trapped inside of the doll. Apparently one day in an interview about Letta, as the interviewer was asking questions about the person who passed, the doll began to move in her lap. Yeah, no thank you. Letta has his own Instagram and Facebook page in case you want to hear more about all of the creepiness surrounding this cursed doll. In our number 1 spot today we have the mask. This metal mask resembles the face of a monkey. It's definitely already a little strange looking, but the story is even more interesting. According to the seller of this item, they explained that they acquired this mask in Thailand, but not before they experienced a supernatural battle where a witch used spells to bind the spirit of a jinn to the mask, trapping it in. Since then, the mask is said to be full of supernatural powers, some of which could bring benefits, but it takes a whole pile of work. This mask is said to have the ability to fend off vampires as well as potentially bring riches to its owner, but it needs some things in return. The entity in the mask needs regular offerings of food and drink, and it also requires the owner to meditate in front of it for 20 minutes 3 times a day. Talk about high maintenance. If a person refuses to do these things while in possession of the mask, it is said that a cruel fate awaits them. I mean, what do you expect when you anger an ancient spirit?